Hi. Also, thank you to Coca-Cola for the Dasani water at every speaker stage. I've been super parched all day, so I really appreciate it. Yay, Coca-Cola. So we're going to do this kind of differently. When we had a planning session, we decided we are kind of over panels and we don't want to have to just go down the line or assign a moderator. So we're just going to have a discussion. We have a few key different topics. Probably we won't be able to get to every single one. They're pretty innovative, but we want this to be a dialogue and a discussion. So if we say something that you want to comment on within reason, or ask a question about, please do so. Feel free. And so we'll just go through this list of items and talk a little bit about it. I mean, we do have pretty diverse backgrounds, so I think we'll be able to present some, hopefully, okay ideas to you guys. So Chris, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Disruptions, things that are disrupting your operations today are typically items that are going to be able to lead to improvement. They're technology-based, they're moving quicker. We probably don't need to tell you that if you have one restaurant or if you're a multi-unit restaurant, you're needing to make decisions faster. You're needing to keep up with your customers' demands that are changing faster. You're needing to motivate and train your staff in different ways than you did just a few years ago. So in other words, your operation and your ability to compete successfully is being disrupted. But those disruptions are changing and making us a little bit more efficient, more improved for the future. Some of you may already be using kiosks, tabletop ordering. If you're not, maybe some of you have grown familiar with where they're already happening. We'd like to take a few minutes and maybe visit that, where we've seen it, why we think it's working, how it might impact you in the future. Anybody wants to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. So obviously, how many of you guys have seen tabletop ordering out in the field? Okay. And how many of you have it in your restaurant? Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I know Nicole. So Nicole, she works for us as well, and she works at Chili's, and obviously they have tabletop on there. And she's told me before that one of the most annoying things is getting feedback immediately from a customer. Even though it's helpful, sometimes it can be a little like, she's a great waitress, but like one person commenting can kind of throw her whole night, which is annoying. So give it up for Nicole, who has been a 10-year Chili's waitress, by the way. So one of the things that we're noticing that's changing in the tabletop space is we're starting to see more tabletops that are available for independent restaurants. So how many of y'all are independent or small chain? Yeah, okay. So the reason you probably haven't looked at it is because it's not affordable, or it doesn't make a lot of sense because you're not able to share data between one restaurant and another, which is one of the big advantages of using tabletop systems and that kind of feedback and payment. Kiosk actually, and they're here today, this is not an advertisement for them, but I do know that they are rolling out one for independent restaurants that is affordable, it's really lightweight, it's very secure, and it's being able to get that feedback from the customer immediately and also pay at the table, which is just going to increase your table turn. And actually, there was a study that was released a couple years ago on Chili's that's using tabletop ordering that says that the check average is actually a little higher too when you have the ability to do tabletop ordering or tabletop payment. So that's something that I know is happening, so hopefully more independents will be able to utilize that technology. Thomas?
I want to underline that point, though. We've come across tabletop ordering with clients that are independents but moving into non-traditional venues. If any of you have interest in, say, having your brand be promoted or expanded in a non-traditional venue like a stadium, a ballpark, a city park, tunnel, airports. So we've been very active in those sectors lately, and moving independent operators into there means that you will operate with kiosk ordering. Most airports are going that way. Most major food service providers that are in large venues are doing that. And we've learned both of those items that Anna just mentioned. We've learned that there is a way of doing quicker service. People are in charge of their own schedule. They're sitting down, they're ordering, and because they're ordering, we're noticing we're getting information in quicker. And we seem to be getting higher check averages. People seem to be more apt to just add something if it's sitting in front of them. And so this might be the first time we hear the comment that I think we're going to hear throughout the case of the discussion, is that a lot of times something new that's brought up might have a labor impact, but it isn't necessarily the main directive. as in here, in the non-traditional situations, they may now have fewer people out on the floor than they would, but that wasn't really the main objective, was the lowering of labor. Their labor costs might still be the same because of the behind-the-counter higher wage people, but it's the information quicker, the table turnover, and the higher check average that are the advantages of the tabletop ordering.
Now, one of the disadvantages, so I will say, is how many of you have been to a McDonald's that rolled out the kiosk ordering recently? Yeah, okay. Okay. I'm gonna bring up a shameful thing, right? It's a huge kiosk, like in the middle of the McDonald's, and it takes a little while to sort of get through the menu and figure out what you want. And my husband always wants large fries and a large chocolate shake, but you look like a total fatty when you're ordering that stuff at a kiosk, because everyone can see what you're ordering. And so it's a little like, oh, I don't know if I want the person behind me to see what I'm getting exactly, or see how long it takes me, a millennial technology person, to figure it out. So there's some pain points there, and I don't think it was McDonald's, but another restaurant that rolled out kiosk ordering in their quick service. A lot of people got frustrated with it and just started going to the counter. So it didn't quite work. So there's a big discussion to be had around user experience for guests when it comes to kiosks, and we're getting there, but I don't think we're quite figured it all out.
How many of you travel on the Texas highways and stop at a Buc-ee's? It's a fantastic people watching. I make a point of stopping, but you'll notice they've got a good blend, and they tell me that the kiosk ordering is mandatory so that you can order from any part of the store without having to walk up to the counter. Now, most restaurants wouldn't have that kind of a space issue because we're not going to be laid out as big as a miniature Walmart. But that's one of their advantages, and they also told me that it seems to drive a lot of their packaged grab and go, which is why they have bigger islands now and more product available for grab and go, because if you don't want to use a kiosk, you're grabbing the sandwiches or you're grabbing the prepackaged items, which are in a managed portion, have a good margin, slightly higher PPA. So indirectly, it's also helped that too. Okay, in no particular order, our next one, there we go, cloud report cards. This might be something that's closer to home. Are you doing any of this kind of reporting in your restaurant? Okay. How about you, Anna? Do you've got anybody that's doing their daily sales reports, posting it in a cloud? Have some of you done this yet? I have some clients that have switched to that, and it's wonderful. It's basically taking the place of your daily sales report that would normally be written in a book so that managers can communicate at the end of every shift, or that weekly it can form a basis of a weekly planning guide or a manager's agenda. But now by posting it into an email-based where everyone just has their password, it means now that you can, from any time, any day, the owner, the operator, or managers of other locations can see some of the metrics that you want tracked either by shift or by day, because once it's posted, it's there. For no one else to see it, but everyone with a password is going in, and we're able to track per person check averages, paid outs voids, revenue compared to budget, hourly labor by category. And so it's a very easy way now that a lot of smaller independents are able to gather data and privately maintain data.
So for us, we have 4 locations right now with 2 more opening this year, and it's been a big help for us because, as you know, each of your general managers and each assistant manager has a different personality. Everyone runs their shifts a little bit differently. So for me, it's nice, sometimes not so nice, to wake up, at 6:45 and read the reports of everything that happened the night before, what discounts were given, who the discounts were given to, what the sales were, who was fired, who was hired. It basically gives you kind of a pulse on what happens the entire day before, the good and the bad. And so for us, it's good because it gets emailed to whoever you want. And so for us, everybody's on that email chain. Every owner, every partner, and people will have a different perspective, they'll have different questions, but what it does help is it does seem to help our managers stay a little bit more accountable, because now it's not so much relying on whether Thomas reads it, it's Anna reading it, it's Chef Paul reading it, it's everyone reading it and getting something a little bit differently. Why were the discounts 10% higher yesterday? Who did you give that to? why did you do this? You know, why is this? You can answer the questions immediately without having to go to the location. You can look at it and within minutes email the questions to that specific GM and say, can you tell me a little bit about what happened with this situation? And so for us, that saves a lot of time. And it's, you know, most of these reports are built into your POS system, so that's what we use too.
Just another word on this. One of the key, I mean, I'm glad Thomas mentioned POS on this too, because you are seeing a lot of these things come standard now with POS, where you're able to have not just these kind of report cards, but actually suggested actionable steps for what to do with that information. So for example, if any of you have gone over to talk to Hot Schedules, they're rolling out a new product called Clarify, and it's really, really amazing. They're actually able to suggest to you, based on last week's performance, we suggest you give this server a bigger section because we think they can handle it more. Or it's going to be sunny today, let's open the patio. Oh, that needs we need to restructure the seating assignments and stuff like that, or the section assignments. Which is really amazing because we've had data and big data for a really long time. I feel like we've been talking about it for ages. But the difference now is that the data is actually being put into actionable steps that doesn't require like too much brain power, you know? So it's like, oh, that is a really good suggestion. Oh, and so you can move a lot faster. It just takes out a lot of the decision-making process basically for you.
I just thought of this. I have one client that started doing this a while ago, POS in the cloud. All managers from all units could see how each other were doing, to your point. They've now moved to where they're doing fewer narrative reports, and it's partly, I think, just because of the age and dynamic of management, where they're doing this now with like 4 or 5 photos. So they've got the cloud report, take a picture, post it in the cloud. If we need to all communicate about receiving for the next day, they go into the walk-in, take the picture of the racks with the receiving POs, and so it's all click, 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 4 pictures, send, and then they leave the building. Who would have thought? But it's just a way of using information now that's quicker, easier, faster, and meets the mentality of today's management and staff. Okay, let's see what's next. We've got frozen up here. This is something where, we could almost have a separate, comment on this, but technology is developing a market segment that is now competing with the independent restaurants. Grocery stores, as you've noticed, are now sort of gaining ground in packaged meals that are not just bought in their store, but with their promotion of how easy you can online order, get it delivered, or pull up and they deliver to their car. They've added on special things for like meals for that evening. As long as you're ordering your groceries and you said you're going to pick it up at 5, I've gone on HEB and others, and now they're prompting to say, dinner for 2, dinner for 4. So this is now infringing upon independent, restaurants. It's disruptive to say the existing takeout or third-party delivery that you're doing. It's coming from a whole new market segment. It's all because of technology. Have you seen any impact?
All right, I'll talk about it. Don't do this. Eat at restaurants every day, please, for every single meal. We love our friends at HEB. Like I'm Texan, so of course I love HEB. When they acquired Favor a few months ago, that made me sit up and take notice because that meant that they were going to be pushing their delivery services via Favor. Is that someone else you know? Oh, okay. You're so popular. So that meant they were going to be pushing their grocery delivery a lot more. And so I told these guys last week that just out of experiment to see if it actually worked, we decided to take one for the team and try and order a couple six-packs from HEB in order to watch the World Cup game during work. Todd, you were there. It worked, and it was great, and it was under 30 minutes, and we were able to have the beer there. Now, it wasn't cold, so there's some things they need to figure out as far as client experience. But this is a huge pain point for restaurants on the horizon. People are going to be ordering more and more delivery from their grocery stores. There's this sense that grocery delivery is more healthful. And so you think about ordering from grocery and you think about ordering produce or something that's made that and packaged there. For some reason, it has this perception with customers that it's a better for you situation. So I would highly recommend restaurants take a look at what this might do for your business. There is a restaurant in Washington, D.C. that has been doing packaged meals that you can cook at home for some time now, and it's available in like a little retail store. So it's just another way for them to sort of diversify their income and product offering. So just something to think about. But please don't do this. Please just eat out.
Okay, who wants to talk about cashless?
All right. So we were a guinea pig here in Houston. All of our locations went cashless for the last year with mixed results. So I'm save you guys a lot of time, and please, if you have any questions or comments, ask me. I'll tell you the good and the bad. Ultimately, for us, it boils down to this. Going cashless for us, and this is my opinion, right? Running this for about a year and a half. Going cashless is awesome for your employees and for your business. That's my opinion. It's not so great on the customer side. The market is not ready for it yet. It's just not. No one is going to rave about your business from a consumer standpoint because you're cashless. I have yet to see somebody say, yes, they're cashless, I love it. It's more of like, they're cashless, you know? It's not really, we haven't seen it become an actual benefit to a consumer. It's not like, we used to not have high chairs, right? Some people really love that we didn't have high chairs because they didn't want to eat around crying babies. No one gets crazy about us being cashless.
Yeah.
Cashless is something that people kind of tolerate. Oh, good, I use credit card. I guess I'm okay here. The problem is, like 2 times a month, you get someone really pissed off. How can you do this? Isn't this America? How can you not take cash? They take it to like the next level, and it's really not worth it because, you know, we're in the business, obviously, you're in a restaurant business, we're here to make money, right? And if it's something is really annoying, even if it's 1 out of every 20, it's too frequent. And so we actually changed back every location except one. My whole staff is like begging me not to change it back. So if I have enough fires to deal with this year, I'm like, fine. But our fast casual, we had to change back to accepting cash because ultimately we're just not pleasing everybody. I want people to get happy. I don't want them to be mad. And if it's, you know, going cashless, there's just not enough benefits on the consumer side to justify staying in. So any questions on cashless?
Okay, so recently, you know, that Danny Meyer announced that they were going cashless, and there was a severe amount of blowback from him, or for his restaurants. Danny Meyer, Union Square, New York, that guy, okay. And basically he said that people called him like a classist, basically, that he was shutting out an entire population of people that are unbanked. And we know that in America there are a lot of people that run on cash and don't have bank accounts, and so don't have credit cards or debit cards or anything like that. Do you think that any of the blowback that you're getting from consumers is based on sort of, are you shutting out a class of people?
That's part of the arguments. If you go online, you'll see some people, they take it to this next level. And I think that's part of it. You know, they feel like the government's watching them. That's why they don't want to use credit cards. They feel like you're removing how could you prevent an entire class of people from eating at your restaurant? So these are not arguments I want to participate in. You know, I just want people to eat, be happy, come back. So for us, it's not worth having some kind of diabolical, you know, debate about whether or not we should accept cash. I have other things to kind of worry about. So ultimately, I think it was a great experiment for us to do. I'm glad we're kind of being the guinea pigs for everybody else. So it makes me sleep better at night to be able to share kind of the good and the bad about what happened with us. So.
I think this gives us an opportunity to state, this is probably a good opportunity just to state what would probably be the summary for all technology disruptions that we're talking about today. And that is okay, that was fun. Want to do that again? I think this probably poses a good point in that for every advantage, there seems to be an equal disadvantage. Success is going to be found somewhere in between. That's one of the few things I remember from high school. I think my journalism teacher brought that up, and for some reason I thought then, Okay, doesn't make much sense. But certainly today's topic is all about that. You know, if you think of 85 to 90% of, for some of your concepts are being run through credit cards anyway, it might be easy to say, I'm ready to just go cashless. 80 to 90% of my people are using debit or credit. I get it. So that's the technology that they want. But then you've got that 10% that feel either insulted or left out. So with technology, all of you are going to be deciding whether it's inventory management, cash or whatnot, or table side ordering, guest check presentation. I think the success is going to be found within the balance of giving people the technology that their world is demanding and still giving them the personal service that they're deserving. Somewhere in there is the balance, and that's where you're going to find success.
Well, and I think a lot of people that work in technology around payments too, we never really predicted that mobile payment would be so slow to take on too. I really thought, like, I love using mobile payment. It's wonderful, and I like playing with my watch. Like, I feel like I'm in Star Trek. It's awesome, boop, boop. And it's a really good feeling, but it hasn't caught on the way we thought it would. And even my mother, I taught her how to use the Starbucks app, and she loved it for about a week, and now she just uses her little gift card swipey thing. So I don't know. I think that there's just some pain points. It's just going to take some time for it to really catch on. But the more we use it, the more it'll catch on. So if you are at all inclined to see payments advance into the future, and we'll talk about blockchain and what that means in a moment, I would definitely recommend using mobile payment, using cashless more.
I think we talked a little bit about the retail market intrusion.
So one thing that we contribute here is our fast casual concept is called Peli Kitchen. We're opening inside of the new 365 Whole Foods in Houston, August 22nd. Anybody from Houston here? All right. So that's an experiment for us. So Whole Foods has had restaurants in their concepts before. 365 is a smaller, more affordable version of their concept. They only have one restaurant and one coffee juice provider. So we're going to be on one side, and Juice Society is going to be on the other. This one's interesting for us because we're going to be introducing kind of South African-inspired products, wines. That's where we're kind of headed into with this. So for us, the experiment is how many of the consumers, because it's become kind of a grab and go, lots of times they're at the grocery store, they don't necessarily want to grab food, go home and cook it. You know, they've gone to work, they want to go home, get groceries, and actually get something to eat and bring home. So for us, it's an experiment into how many of those customers we can actually convert. And you know, it's been a very difficult process working with Whole Foods. Essentially, our entire ingredient list is out the window. We have to start from scratch, which is good and bad. You know, Whole Foods, as they should be, are very strict about the type of ingredients that you're allowed to sell in their space. So we've had to reconfigure everything from Peli into that space. So.
And I think that this offers an opportunity if your unit is available to use small space, high technology, and getting into non-traditional locations, grocery stores. So I wish you the best with that. I think it'll work, and I think others might be able to fit into this too. Where is it? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I asked them to play Mr. Roboto whenever this slide came up, but we couldn't do that, sorry. Robotics. This is one of my favorite topics, and I could really talk your ear off, and I won't do it too much, but I think that we're at a tipping point now where the technology is finally catching up with price and consumer expectation and wage battles that are happening within restaurants, that robotics are going to become more and more prevalent. There are some real advantages to considering robotics in the back of the house. If you think about it, you're able to be more precise when it comes to measurement. So for caloric estimates and for people that are following certain diets, you can trust a robot a little more when it comes to cross-contamination practices. You don't really see that so much if the technology is set up correctly. And then, I don't know. We'll talk about, we might as well jump into the wage thing, right? The big W.
Yes.
It's getting really difficult, I know, for every one of you to find good talent and keep good talent. And the idea of paying that talent that exists even more when you have to spend so much more on like product and rent and everything else is kind of overwhelming. And so I hope that you will take a look at robotics as a possible solution for both back of house and front of house. There are a few out there right now. Everyone knows about, well, not everyone, but Sally, the salad robot, is out there and in different convenience stores and hotels right now. It's a machine basically that dispenses salad based on what you order from the front of the machine. There's also a dishwashing machine robot that is in the works. One that has sensors all over it. Basically, I think Chris, we talked a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to be anything that can be automated. Typically, is going to be turned into a robot. So I don't know. It gets very sensitive very quickly because people think, well, robots are going to take everyone's jobs, and I don't really see that. I think that there are things that humans can do that robots never will be able to. A robot won't be able to look in Thomas's eyes and really ask him how his day is and how's his anniversary going and how's that dog. Well, not right now, anyway. So I think that there's something really to looking into robotics, and I'd love to hear from any of you guys if you have initial thoughts as well on robots. Are they, yeah? Don't know. I see a lot of shrugs.
The thing about the robotic movement is this is something for us in the industry that we're just going to be coming to grips with over the next decade. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going from where we are today in the back house of prep to seeing 2 or 3 robots standing there. No, but it does mean that robotics as a movement are beginning to get there. I think Anna brought up an excellent example where dishwashers and other machinery that looks just like the regular machinery we've been using, are going to be operating on different technology that they're really calling robotic technology. It thinks and can save you people or time. The example that I saw earlier was the way we racked glasses and cups. You know, we always had different size racks for glasses, cups, bar glasses. Well, robotics now are able to open, close that door, read that rack, and know what is in there. It's wine glasses. So it's going to tell then the machine how much water, at what temperature, for how long, and how much dishwasher detergent's going to be needed. The next rack is a red rack for coffee cups. Immediately it's going to go program different water for different time for different amount of temperature. So you're going to get accuracy, efficiency, and then that's how I see us sort of stepping away from what used to be the guy. I mean, it was my first job. It was my judgment for how many times I was supposed to hit the button and wash things. Well, all that's going to be going away. And it's not necessarily for the goal of replacing people, although since it's so hard to find people, that's a nice side advantage. It's really more for the increased efficiency and for the accuracy that sometimes the human element just doesn't possess. Okay, customer data and technology. Thomas, are you involved in gathering data through technology now? Not as much? Some are using it more than others. Not necessarily so much through robotics, but through just better use of technology. What I'm seeing is many of the independent restaurant clients we work with have begun to move away from the old manual customer shopper. You got a 2-page thing, come on in, see how we're doing, because we want to measure and we want to get consumer data. Now we're getting that consumer data every shift off of the POS, or we're getting it off of their payment usage, or some of you might already be using those third-party customer data surveys that look like check presenters. There's 2 or 3 companies doing that. I mean, I trip over them a lot, working with restaurants. So you're getting customer data immediately at the time of the experience. That seems to be where we're heading. Anybody using that kind of technology now? Yeah, there's a Houston-based company that I trip over a little bit with some clients that do that, where you for full-service restaurants, when you make your check presentation at the table, you open it up, you have the check right there to sign, but when you open it up on the left-hand side, it sort of blinks with your logo. You tap it, there's like 5 or 6 questions. What I love about it is people think it's a survey. It isn't. When you hit send, it's a text going to whoever it is you wanted it to go to. It could go to the owner at home, the district supervisor, the GM in the corner who knows right then that somebody at table 42 said, rating their food that the soup was cold or fish was salty or something. So there's a lot of ways that customer data now is gathered, but it's gathered much more quickly. And hopefully you can see the advantages in that. one of the key advantages I saw was a way of gathering what could be negative information in a way that helps you, rather than after we jump into the Suburban and we Facebook and we Yelp and we post it to everybody else, which is now more of a negative than it is a help to you. So if somebody really did not enjoy their experience, we need to know. We would prefer to know rather than having to tell 13,000 people what they thought. So if people can get it out of their system tableside when they're paying, they may not be as apt to jump in their car and say, I just got to tell everybody why this place blows. And in some of the clients that I've worked with, that's exactly what's happened. They get great data. They can now do recovery directly, recovery privately, rather than recovery to the social media world. That's a nice advantage, I think, of disrupting what used to be the old, every once in a while, consumer survey.
One thing I'd add to that is, if you're running a restaurant, there is something as too much data. We've got a business to run. I can't sift through all this data. You can get all kinds of stuff. So I will tell you guys, I'll warn you, figure out what you want to do with it, right? I mean, if you get all this data about people pissed off at your restaurant and you're not responding to all these bad reviews or you're not saying anything to all these people, then it's all going to go to waste. So as a restaurant, I would figure out what is most important to us right now. Is it finding out when people's birthdays are to send them something? Are we review driven? Is it making sure that we're preventing bad reviews? If so, who's doing it? Who's reaching out on a consistent basis? And if you can't even do it on your own Yelp or Facebook or TripAdvisor, forget about any of these programs that are out there. Mm-hmm. You're gonna waste your time and you're gonna waste your money. Start with the basics. Yelp is free. TripAdvisor is free. Facebook's free. If you can't even manage that, and I have a hard time myself, trust me, I know, it's a full-time job, then be careful about signing up for something with all this data, because data is all out there. What's more important is what you're going to do with it.
Well said.
I only have one thing on that. Yelp is not free because they will call you every week to try and get you advertised.
We talked a little bit about this, I think, because you brought up a really good point about how technology now has disrupted the way restaurants are communicating with staff, scheduling staff. Whether you're using a hot schedule program or another program, the advantages of being able to communicate directly to staff in the way that they are used to communicating, which is all handheld. The idea of having employee notices or bulletin boards are really pretty much so, 5-10 years ago, because most of the people we work with are using scheduling not just for data, labor models, and updating important schedule changes directly to the staff, but they're all using it for daily reminders, pre-shift topics, Saturday notes, things that you want your staff to know. So there's a real good way of communicating to staff as well as getting all the data that you need to do schedules and manage schedules off of the 4 or 5 different companies that are available now that are all disrupting the way we used to do scheduling.
One other thing on this, and I hope I frighten you a little bit with this, is how many of you have heard of smart scheduling legislation? Okay.
Not very smart.
Yeah, it's a little terrifying. We took a trip up when, so Mark Davis Bailey is our, past president now. We took a trip up to Seattle back last fall and had a good chat with a lot of different restaurant operators up there who have been dealing with a lot of new legislation and regulation that they have to deal with in their city. One of those is the idea of smart scheduling, and that's the term that those people came up with. But really what it means is when you set a schedule 2 weeks ahead of time and you send out that schedule, you cannot change it. And if you do change it, then you have to reimburse that person for the time that they are not working. And if you cut them early, you still have to pay them for that time as well. And that's really, really difficult in the restaurant business because sometimes it's a slow night and you need to cut people early. Sometimes there's a big sporting event that you weren't aware of and you need to add more staff, something like that. One of the biggest reasons people work in this industry is because of the flexibility of that. And so it's really terrifying. And we heard some crazy stories from people up there that they've paid tons of money for unworked hours And it's a way, I understand it in theory, it's a way to protect labor, to make sure they're not being taken advantage of, and they're scheduled, and then the rug's pulled out from under them, and they have bills to pay, and we totally get that. But when you have the flexibility of being able to pick up an extra shift and cover some of that, that should be totally fine. I bring that up because some of the tools that Chris was alluding to actually can help combat that. If we're able to say, hey, city regulators, we already have this scheduling in place. We already communicate this really effectively. We have these great technology tools that our staff gets to use. Chances are the legislation, the regulation won't come up in your city, or it'll be easier to combat. So that's a long explanation of why this is really important, but it's really a protection measure for what some labor unions are trying to push through in different municipalities.
The clients that I worked with on this in California had to modify their schedules so that they would not necessarily use specific times. Now, a lot of you are probably on that now, so that an evening shift isn't scheduled, say from 5 to 9 or 5 to 11, thereby if we made an adjustment, we could be penalized. It was more of an evening shift, and if there were the 3 or 4 stations that were typically the ODLs, the option to leave early, they were just scheduled from start to question mark. Or if you were scheduled to close, we don't really know if closing at 10 means you're all leaving at 10:15, 10:30, 10:45. So you're just scheduled to close. So this way, that fell under what they were enforcing as anticipated or estimated hours, because the smart scheduling is set hours are the ones that can't be changed. It's something that we hope doesn't really spread, because if it does, it's just so difficult to work around, to try to stay flexible, but yet avoid penalty. So we're hoping it just doesn't really catch on. Okay, we got a couple of more really good ones here to talk about that we know are disrupting the norm.
Okay, so guys, I'll tell you, as a restaurateur, for me, in the last couple of years, this has probably been one of the best things to happen in our industry. And it's crazy to me that not everyone is aware of this. So I can only speak to Houston, that's where I'm from. But if you're in Houston, foodie groups now, it has changed the game, in my opinion, on how you connect with new customers, old customers, just everyone in general. There's no better way to communicate and have a relationship with outside customers. And what I mean by this is, if you're in Houston, there's these foodie groups on Facebook, and they range anywhere from 2,000 members to 30,000 members. And they're specific to a specific suburban area. There's one in Katy. Katy Fort Bend Foodies has 30,000 members. There's a Woodlands area foodie group that has 18,000, 20,000. There's a Houston Foodie Friends that's run by Cleverly Stone. That one has about 20,000 members. But if you're a restaurant, you have to be on one of these things. It is amazing. And what they are, it's a concentrated group. Let me give you an example. Katy Fort Bend Foodies. 30,000 members that live in Sugar Land, Cypress. You can live anywhere. It's free to join. This is where people in Katy get information about where they should eat. Chronicle doesn't write about restaurants in Katy. Eater doesn't. Very rare. So if you live out in Katy, it's the only place that you go to find out when new restaurants have opened. And better yet, the reviews are better because you can actually see who's writing about it.
Yeah.
You can agree. You can actually click on their Facebook page, say, that guy looks like we have nothing in common, or say, wow. I can actually look at their Facebook page and see, like, wow, they love this Mexican restaurant. Maybe I'll like it too. You can actually see the people that write either good stuff or bad stuff about restaurants. And you can actually have an open dialogue. The most successful kind of restaurants in terms of in Katy are always the ones that have owners on there all the time, or they have their bartenders on, or they have their managers on. They're responding and making comments. People will, if you go online right now and you look up Katy Fort Bend Foodies, people will say, what's the best happy hour? Oh my God, I just ate at Abuelos, it's amazing. Oh my God, when is Peli opening? And you'll have all these comments, all these kind of interactions. And whenever I go on there and I say, hey guys, here's what's going on, people feel like, oh, I'm actually talking to one of the guys at that particular restaurant, and they can ask questions. They add me as friends on Facebook. My wife always makes fun of me. I have like 5,000 friends. I know half of them. The other half, it just seems like people that live in Katy, want to interact, but as a restaurateur, that's what we want, right? I mean, it's very expensive to acquire new customers in today's age. It's impossible to market because it's so fragmented. So for me, when we opened out in Katy, I'm going on there and I'm telling people when we're opening, we're doing soft openings, we're doing prizes, we just did a fundraiser, and you build this community of people that not only follow your page, but they interact with you on that particular foodie group. So if you guys are in Houston, I'm assuming in Austin or San Antonio, they have this everywhere, but
Yes, they do, yes.
in Houston, there's one in Cypress, there's one for Katy, there's one in Woodlands, Houston, Memorial Area Eats. Please join all of them, look into it, but I'm telling you guys, if you own a restaurant or you have a business, you've got to get on there. If you're not getting on there, you're wasting a lot of potential opportunities to market your business. Any questions? I
No,
was just saying hi.
Oh, no, I don't have anything to add on that one. That's great. You should definitely do it. You know, blockchain is kind of complicated, and we have 2 minutes, so I think I'm going to skip this one. So if there are any blockchain nerds out there, please come talk to me.
oh,
and
you can't, give us an overview, and
no,
then we'll
it's
end
like-
after that.
It's what cryptocurrency was built on. It's basically democratized data and exchanging, tokenized data between one person and another. And it's not just one house that owns the data. So Capital One doesn't own all the financial data. It's still secure, but like you can basically use a token to pass between different individuals and different companies. There's a lot of opportunity when it comes to supply chain there, and for smaller suppliers to compete with the big broadliners. So maybe we'll do another session in Houston about that.
That would be great.